Hi and welcome, it's Jennifer. Today I wanted to show you another way you can create cards you can see through, including acetate and vellum, and also some ways to add a little bit of interest to them, including color. I'm also going to show you a way you can enhance your stamp layering stamps to get even more faux dimension. And I'm going to do some partial die cutting. So I have a lot to share in this video. I actually created 5 cards at a time. I like to make more than one at a time. So I'll show you some of the variations that I did. I'm going to go ahead and start with the stamp layering. This is a new Hero Arts Flamingo stamp set that I am really excited about. So all you have to do is stamp these images on top of each other in different colors and you get beautiful faux dimension. I'm using my mini MISTI stamping tool today because I'm making so many at once and it's really helpful with stamp layering. However, you could just use an acrylic block if that's what you have. I'm actually starting with 6 pieces of 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch Neenah white cardstock. Any white cardstock would work. I'm putting 3 in my stamp positioner here. That just saves me time from having to switch out. I'm starting with the most solid image first, and I'm going to stamp that on each of these 6 pieces. And you'll see me do a few along the way. So I'm putting the flamingo exactly where I want it, then closing the door on the MISTI stamping tool. Now, instead of just using one ink color here, I'm going to go for more color variation by using 2 each time. So here I am using a light pink ink, inking up the flamingo, and then dabbing off some of the color with a dry cloth, just the color towards the top of the flamingo. So here I'm going to do it again. I'm going to ink that up with that light pink stamp, just very quick and easy, and then dab off some of that extra ink towards the top with a dry cloth. That kind of gives you a nice little variation of color from dark to light. Now I'm going to go through and do that with all 6 pieces. Next, I'm going to take that same image, but going and adding another color onto what we've already stamped. This time I'm using a light peach ink, and I'm inking up the flamingo, dabbing off some of the ink from the bottom of the flamingo, and stamping again. And there you get a little bit of variation. It doesn't have to be perfect here, because we are going to add more layers of other images on top. But if this were your only image and you wanted to do two-tone like this, you could just stamp it a few times using the MISTI stamping tool. Or you can take better care to make sure you get really good ink coverage when you're stamping it. I'm doing this very quickly. Once I have all 6 pieces done, it's time for the next layer of the stamping images. The nice thing about this flamingo stamp set, it is really easy to line up each image on top of each other. You really don't need a stamp positioner for it. The 2 colors I'm going to use for this layer are bubblegum and pale tomato. First, I'm going to ink up with bubblegum, dab away some of the ink from the top, stamp that, and I'll do that on all 6, and then I'll go through and do the pale tomato towards the top, dab off some of the ink, and stamp again. Remember, you could just do one solid color for each of these layers. This is just a way to get more out of the inks you may already have. If you don't have this many ink colors, you could always put marker on your stamp and stamp with a marker. Or you could even double stamp, so stamp a few times on top of each other to get a darker color. But check out the beautiful color variation you get by using the 2 colors with each layer. If you don't have a stamp positioner, you can easily look through an acrylic block and line up each layer every time you stamp. This is a really easy one to line up. There's no guesswork involved. So now we're on to the final layer of the flamingo. I'm just lining it up with the flamingo we've already stamped. Sorry, I'm kind of off camera here. I'll just close the door on my MISTI and then I'll have it perfectly placed. I just need to make sure that every time I put my paper in the MISTI, I put it in the same spot, and that's the bottom left corner. This time I'm just using one color, and this is the ultra pink, which is a nice bright pink. By using both peach colors and pink colors, we get a beautiful salmon result. You can see like the variation of color on the flamingo. Next we need to do his eye and his beak, so I'm going to just position this, and I'm going to stamp this with black ink so that it really stands out. Now you'll see that stamping all these layers does take a little bit of time, but keep in mind that I'm creating 6 cards here at once, and I don't really have to color anything else. Once I have all this stamping done, the image is done, so I'm not taking time to color with watercolor or Copics. I'm putting my effort into my stamping. And the nice thing is you're going to get the same result on each one. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll watercolor something and then I'll try to repeat it and I just can't get it. This is something that I can count on. When I'm using stamps and inks, I can get good results every time. Okay, now for the legs, I wanted it to be peach, but have a little gray to it. So I first stamped in peach. Now I'm inking it up with a soft granite color, dabbing away some of the color and then stamping it again so that he has a little gray towards his feet and just made it look a little bit more realistic. I really like to use two colors stamped on top of each other, just being sure to remove some of the color with a dry cloth so you can see the variation in color. This is a great way to get more out of your inks and stamps. I finished off my stamping by adding some of the greenery that's in that same stamp set. I used some Green Hills and Lime Green Hero Arts inks. I stamped those, and then I actually double stamped them just to make it a little bit darker. Then I added some of the Field Green color, which is a darker green, put it towards the base of those leaves and stamped that also. So I did two-tone with those also. Then I used the little puddle images that are in the same stamp set and just stamped a few around the flamingo's feet in Tide Pool and Soft Pool. So now it's time to do some partial die cutting to get those diagonal lines that you see there with the flamingo's head above. So I have a die here. This is the flamingo die that coordinates. This is available from Hero Arts also. I'm going to line up the head so it die cuts nicely. I like that their dies cut right close to the edge. I'm going to put this into my die cut machine, but only partially. I'm only putting his head in my die cut machine, which sounds absolutely terrible, and I'm putting it at an angle. So now anything that is on the edge of the cutting plate, right there's the edge of the cutting plate, anything that's to the left of that will cut, anything to the right of that will not cut. So it doesn't matter where your top plate is, we're just looking at that bottom edge cutting plate, and anything to the left of that edge there will cut, anything to the right will not cut. And you'll see I have it as a kind of a diagonal so that we can cut our edge at a diagonal. So you'll see here that only the head of the flamingo, the top part of the flamingo cut. And we'll continue at that diagonal cut later with a trimmer. Here I'm going to show you it again. I'm going to put it kind of hanging out at a diagonal. You want to make sure that the paper will go through the die cut machine, of course. Anything to the left of that cutting plate edge will cut. Anything to the right will not. So this is a great way to kind of get more out of your coordinating dies. So now I'm going to use my trimmer to connect those two spots where the die cutting stopped. So here I've got it at an angle in my trimmer. I'm going to cut up to the stamped image, right up to where the die cutting stops. So I'm cutting over there and then behind the flamingo also. And there we have a diagonal edge with that flamingo kind of sticking up from the top. This is a great way to give a really clean cut design and get more out of your coordinating dies. At the end of this video, I'll link to some other partial die cutting videos that I've done, and they explain it a little bit better than I did today. There's a lot you can do with partial die cutting. So I ended up creating 5 cards. I messed one up along the way, and I have the diagonal line going in different directions on each of these, just for some variety. So now we need to cut some white pieces for the inside of our card. So I'm putting our piece up against another 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white piece, lining it up on the bottom and creating pencil marks that go along with the diagonal line. Now I'm going to cut a white piece to the same diagonal using my trimmer, and these will go on the inside of my card. I actually cut 2 at once, but you're going to end up wanting to cut 3, all to that same size as the bottom piece. I'm going to set those pieces aside. I did it for all of the cards, and now it's time to create the cards themselves, the see-through part of the cards. So I have this Hero Arts background. I love this background. I think it's fantastic. And I have some top folding 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch vellum note card that I created. And that's a heavyweight vellum, 40 pound. You want to make sure to use a heavyweight vellum. I'm inking up my stamp with a Tide Pool ink, which is a Hero Arts ink, and I'm going to stamp it on there. And I'm using a stamp pad underneath to make sure I stamp it entirely. You want to be sure to not move because this is stamping onto a slick surface. So as soon as you're done, give it time to dry or quickly wave a heat gun on it. It'll end up stamping lighter than the ink itself because you're stamping on vellum, but the results are beautiful. I also did some of the cards on a clear note card. So this is a Hero Arts clear acetate note card. I love using clear cards instead of cardstock. This time I'm going to use white staz-on ink. It's best to use staz-on ink when stamping on acetate because it'll give you a bright solid image and it'll dry nicely. So I'm going to ink this up and stamp it onto that acetate. Again, you want to be very careful not to shift as you're stamping this because it will smear. However, if you do mess up, you can just use rubbing alcohol to erase all that staz-on off the acetate and you can start over again. Again, I'm using a stamping pad to help me get a good image. And check out those vivid results. Now you want to set that aside to dry for a bit, or if you want to, you can kind of wave it in front of a heat gun, but you want to be sure not to warp that acetate. When using staz-on, be sure to use staz-on cleaner on rubber stamps only to make sure you remove that staz-on. If you're using staz-on on your clear stamps, be careful because you don't want to use staz-on cleaner on clear stamps. Now it's time to put our cards together. You can see how that pool colored ink dried on the vellum. It's really subtle and beautiful. I'm putting lots of double-sided tape on the back of one of our stamped diagonal pieces, and I'm going to adhere this to the front of the vellum card. I find it's really important to use a strong double-sided tape to make sure that the paper sticks to these slicker surfaces like vellum or acetate. I ended up trimming my card down a little bit because I didn't stamp it completely with the background, so that I'm ending up with a card that's about 4 inches wide by 5.5 tall. Now you can see the adhesive on the inside. If that doesn't bother you, you could just leave it as is, but I like to hide that adhesive. So I'm putting some more double-sided tape on the inside of the card, and then I'm going to put one of those white diagonal pieces that we created to cover that up. This also adds kind of some stability to the card. And by the way, I did mention that I used 40-pound vellum for this card. I'm going to mention again the importance of using a heavyweight vellum like that. If you use a super lightweight vellum, some vellums are very lightweight, your card will end up being kind of flimsy and it won't stand up nicely. It just won't hold up to all this cardstock that we're adding to it. If you are using a lighter weight vellum, you could try doubling it up to make it even stronger if you wanted to. Okay, so now I glued one of those pieces on the inside of the card where you write your message, and now I'm gluing one all the way on the back of the card to hide that adhesive, and this is where you can stamp your hand-stamped by Jennifer stamp image if you wanted to. So now we have a complete card. We have the front, we have a place to write our message on the inside, and then the back where we can sign our name. So this is really a great way to create a see-through card and add some interest to an otherwise cardstock card. I also wanted to add a little bit of shimmer, so I'm just adding some Wink of Stella onto the little wings of the flamingo for some fun. You can barely see the shimmer there because I didn't color it solid, but it does show up in real life. Another fun touch I added was a big drop of glossy accents right on the eye of the flamingo to give it a little bit of dimension to make it pop a bit. Okay, now I just want to show you one last final thing on these cards, and that is the die cut hello that I did. Since I was making 5 at once, I'm going to be using this tool called the Creative Station from Xyron. This is like a giant sticker maker. And since I make several things at once, this is really handy over the smaller sticker maker you've seen me use in videos in the past. So you can see it's got this giant roll of sticker maker on the inside, and you can feed several things through at once to create stickers, or you can put full sheets through, and you just pull it out the other side and it cuts for you. So here I have die cut 5 of those hello die cuts from black cardstock, and this is a Hero Arts hello die, and I'm feeding them all in there. I'm sliding them in there, and then I can put adhesive on the back of these all at once, and it saves me a lot of time. So you can see all 5 in there. You just want to make sure it's pushed up inside. Now I'm cranking the side of it. You can't see, but there's a handle over there that I'm cranking. Starts to come out the back, and check it out. We have 5 hello die cut stickers done that quickly. You can get refills for this machine. If you do not make a bunch of cards like me at once or put adhesive on a bunch of pieces at once, you can get the smaller sticker maker, but I found this is really handy when you're doing a lot of die cutting. So before you remove the release paper, you want to rub that adhesive down onto it to make sure that you get all the sticky taken away. Remove the release paper, and there you have 5 stickers. I like to rub my finger over it again to remove any of the sticky that might be around the edge, and then we're ready to just pick these up and add them to our card. When adding these sticker die cuts, I like to use some tweezers so that I can see where I'm putting it on my card without my fingers being in the way. This really helps me out quite a bit. And I also can make sure it's all positioned perfectly before I press it down. There's one last thing I did to this hello die cut to really make it stand out, and that's that I went over it with some glossy accents. I just put a layer of glossy accents over the hello die cut, and it really made a nice shine. So I wanted to show you each of the completed cards. This is the one where I stamped with the white staz-on on the acetate. It's probably my favorite of the bunch. And then I kept 2 very simple because I was running out of time. And these are just the plain acetate cards with the pieces adhered to them. I really think you can't go wrong by adding a clear element to a card. Now for the vellum, I did 2 different versions. One is the one that I showed you where I stamped with that pool ink and just let it dry on its own. The other one, while that pool ink was still wet, even though it's a dye ink, it doesn't dry right away. So since it was still wet, I added some clear embossing powder, and check out this dimension that you get with just a touch of pool color to it. So I encourage you to try doing heat embossing on your vellum. Just make sure you move your heat gun around so it doesn't warp. Okay, if you're interested in the products that I use, they're linked below in my YouTube description as always, or you can head over to my blog for much more, including a giveaway, and there's a link there on the top left on my logo. In the middle are 3 other videos you might be interested in that show partial die cutting and some stamp layering techniques. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and you can see some more videos in the future. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.